Hey guys, welcome back to Willow Creek. If you are new here, my name is Kenzie. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you are a reoccurring viewer, hello, welcome back. So in today's video, you guys, we are going to be bulk processing potatoes. Now, I picked up a 50-pound bag of potatoes from the Dutchmans store. I will leave that video up above if you have not seen it. But we have a lot of potatoes to go through. And like I had mentioned in the last video, I've never bought potatoes in bulk like that. And I may have cut off a little bit more than I can chew, but that's okay. So I was trying to think of ways that we could preserve them. So we're going to be canning a bunch of them, like I said. And then I'm also going to be making a bunch of hash browns. Now, I've never processed hash browns and like put them up in my freezer myself. But I was trying to think of other things that we could do besides just canning them. So canning them for sure, making hash browns, and then I'm going to do some researching as well and see if we can come up with a couple of other methods to preserve them. So it's going to be a fun day. Like I said, I've never processed this many potatoes, but we got to get it done because they are a little bit ucky and we have a time limit on them. So yeah, stay tuned for all of the mayhem that is about to ensue. And then I also wanted to show you guys really quickly, my friend made me this handmade apron. It has my YouTube logo on it and it is so beautiful. I'm obsessed with it. And my friend is super crafty. I could never in a million years make something like this. So whenever she gifted me it, I almost wanted to cry. It's just so nice and so beautiful. So I am wearing it today and repping her thoughtfulness and craftiness because it's awesome. But yeah, let's get to processing some potatoes. Okay, so I went ahead and got a couple peeled just so I can walk you through like the first steps of how to do this, and then I will speed up the rest of the process. But if you've never canned potatoes before, it is incredibly easy. So basically, whatever potato you are canning, you just want to make sure that they're peeled. And then the next step is to, if you would like, to add some salt to your jars. Now, this is a half of a teaspoon. That is usually what I add. I don't like mine super salty. I think it's 1 teaspoon per quarts, but I do half a teaspoon. So I just go ahead and start adding some salt to each jar. Make sure it's non-iodized whenever you're canning. That helps the canning products not turn like a yellowy, dingy color. So I'm just using some pink Himalayan salt. So I went ahead and added it to our first 4 quarts here. And then the next step is to cut these into whatever sizes you would like. So typically I do like in 4s, I guess you could say. So I cut down the middle, and then on each one of the halves, I usually will cut anywhere from 1 to 2 more times. And then the chunks end up looking like those, like bigger dices. And that's usually what I do it in. You could make them bigger, smaller, whatever it is that you prefer. I just kind of feel like a little bit of a bigger chunk works better for soups and stews and things, which is what I typically put them into. But if you have a different application and you would like them smaller or bigger, you feel free to do that. You can also can like whole half of potatoes, and you can can whole potatoes too. I just don't typically utilize those sizes, so that's not usually what I go for. And then if you come across any spots that you missed while peeling them, just make sure you get those off. You don't want any ucky bits going in your jars. So then you're just going to want to keep filling the jar until you reach the top of it, and then we will add water to this and leave an inch headspace. Okay, so that's about perfect for our first jar, and then we're just going to add some water, like I said. And you're going to want to leave an inch headspace, so that's right at the neck of the jar. And then the next step is to just go ahead and debubble. So I just take a knife, or you can use a debubbling tool, a toothpick, whatever it is that you can get down in the jar to make sure all the bubbles are out. And I didn't get any water or anything even on the top of that, so it doesn't need to be wiped off. But then you just want to add your lid in your ring, and you can shake it up just a little bit if you need to, if the salt is like caked on at the bottom or anything, but 1 jar is down. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start putting these in my canner. I will fill it up. So I only have one pressure canner, which is really unfortunate for big projects like this. I will eventually get a new one whenever we move to our new house. But my stove, the back big burner, does not work properly. So even if I did have a second canner, I wouldn't be able to utilize it. So for the one canner that I do have, I can fit 7 quarts in. So that is the number of times that I'm going to try and do the batches in. So I will get 6 more jars done, and then we will get them going in the canner. And once these are processing, we will start on some hash browns. So I have been pressure canning for probably a year now and water bath canning for about 2.5 years. But when I first learned to pressure can, potatoes and beans were the first two things that I tried. And I absolutely love having potatoes on my pantry shelf to be used in recipes later. I have also heard some people say that you can roast your pressure canned potatoes in the oven with seasonings and things. Now, I've never tried that personally, but I have heard a lot of people say that they turn out really good. So, that is also another way that you could utilize these. I typically use them in soups and stews. I have a really good ham and potato soup recipe that I have shared on my channel before. I will put it up top for you guys. That is my favorite way to utilize these, but there are so many other different applications that you can utilize them with and get creative with. Especially if you're new to pressure canning, potatoes are a great way to get your feet in the water without having a bunch of anxiety because of how easy they are to can. I got all of our quarts going in the canner over here, and we are going to move on to the hash browns. Now, my setup is not ideal for doing big batches like this, so we're probably just going to do them in smaller batches and just continue the process. So, everything that I have researched, basically, since we're not canning these, you can choose to either keep the skins on or take them off. I went ahead and peeled some potatoes here. And then I have this chopper, and I will link it down in the description box for you guys. I was originally going to chop them by hand, and then I was like, you know what? The big cube option on my chopper would probably come in really handy for this. So I'm going to run these through. Once this gets filled, I'm going to transfer the potatoes over to a boiling pot of water. We are going to boil them for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to transfer them into some ice water to stop the cooking process. Typically, I don't blanch things that I'm freezing, but with the potatoes, I really don't want them to turn brown or mushy. Since I'm going through the effort of doing it, I might as well complete the process and do it the right way so that hopefully the end product is really good. So after I take them out of the cold water, I'm going to par freeze them on a baking sheet, and then that way I can vacuum seal the bags and they don't get all stuck together. So hopefully that works out good, but I'm going to go ahead and start getting these diced up, and we will start getting started on the process for making the bulk hash browns. So, excuse me, you guys. Whenever I say hash browns, I guess I am referring to like diced potatoes. Now, that is typically the application that I use potatoes for, is like in breakfast hashes and different casseroles and things. I typically use the bigger chunks of potatoes. So, I diced these with the bigger chopper, and I also utilized the smaller chopper. However, if you guys wanted to do the exact same process and shred your potatoes and do like a finer hash brown, you can absolutely do that as well. You're just going to follow the exact steps like I am doing in the video. But I just wanted to kind of give a reference for what exactly I'm talking about, because that's how I utilize potatoes more instead of the fine shredded ones. But you can absolutely do it the other way. So here I am just getting the first batch of the chopped potatoes on the baking sheet, and you can see there is a little bit of browning. I was not able to do this entirely without having any brown potatoes at all. And everything that I had researched online said that potatoes that are par cooked and then par frozen like this can't brown. So I did go ahead and blanch them for 2 minutes. I don't know if I just didn't do it long enough. The recommended amount of time that I found was 2 minutes at a time. But next time that I try this, maybe I will try it for more like 3 minutes.
So after I was able to par freeze them for about an hour each, I ended up with 2 baking sheets. So here are the bigger chunks, and I'm just vacuum sealing them. But like I said, I let them par freeze for about an hour, and then I just loaded them up in portions that I thought would be suitable for my family and my family's needs. Now, if you think that you would need bigger portions, by all means, use bigger vacuum sealer bags. And this is my favorite vacuum sealer. My husband got this for me as a Christmas gift, and I absolutely love it. So I will make sure to link this down in the description box for you guys. If you are looking for a good vacuum sealer and need a good recommendation, I would highly recommend this one. But again, I'm just going ahead and getting all of these vacuum sealed up, and we ended up with 4 bags of each, which is really nice. And as I'm voicing this over for you guys, they've been in my freezer for about 4 days and they have not continued to brown. So that's awesome. And here are all of the potatoes coming out of my canner. I ended up doing 3 batches. So we got 14 quart jars, and then I believe we ended up with 8 pint jars. I did them in different sizes so that I can use them for different applications.
Hey guys, so don't mind the mess. Everything is in disarray, but it is officially 2 days later from when we did all of these potatoes together. So I planned on finishing this project yesterday, but I was at the Verizon store for 7 hours. I got a brand new phone. I got the iPhone 16, and I went from, I got the iPhone 16, but I went from a Samsung phone. So transferring over all of my data and stuff was just insane. It was a very long process, so I didn't get to finish doing all of this stuff with you guys. But that's okay. So far, I'm loving my new phone. I had a lot of recommendations from people saying that the video quality and the camera quality was exceptional on the new iPhone. So, and so far, I have found that to be true. I really am enjoying it. So hopefully all of the picture quality and stuff is way better for you guys. So yeah, we have a lot of potatoes to finish. We ended up getting 22 jars, and there's not really anything to finish with them. I just need to wash all of the jars and get them labeled and put away. So we will start scrubbing on these, because sometimes, like, if there's siphoning with your potatoes, the starchiness of the potatoes can make the jars kind of gritty. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all of these jars washed off, and then we are also going to be making some meatloaf together for dinner. I thought that sounded really good, and I saved, I don't know, probably like 5 to 10 pounds of potatoes that I have around the corner just for fresh eating and stuff. So we'll make some homemade mashed potatoes and do meatloaf together for dinner. So stay tuned for that, because that'll be fun and it's gonna be delicious. But yeah, let's get all of our jars washed off, and then we can go ahead and start putting these on our pantry shelf. Okay, so I got all of these dried off, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and label them really quickly. I'm not gonna write potatoes on these because I can tell what this is, but usually I would write out the entire, contents of the jar, but for these specifically, I can tell exactly what they are. So I'm just gonna go ahead and write the month and the year. I'm not gonna be super specific about like 10-1 or 10-2. So I'm just gonna go through and write 10 of 24 on these so we know exactly what they are. And then we will start getting them put up on our shelves. And I feel like this is really awesome because winter is coming up, and this will be really nice for soup and stew season. So I'm incredibly, incredibly happy with all of this.
Okay, so let's get some meatloaf made for dinner. So, first things first, I just went ahead and pulled out 2 pounds of hamburger that I had been letting de-thaw overnight. And then I always add 1 egg per pound that I'm using. So, I added 2 eggs. I season with my heart on the Parmesan cheese, and then I add some breadcrumbs. And then this is homegrown green onions. Instead of chopping up onions, I just used what I already had on hand pre made. And then I like to season with garlic, all purpose seasoning, salt, pepper, basil, and Italian seasoning. Now, just to put a little bit of advice for you, what I like to do is if I go to Walmart, usually my Walmart has breads in the clearance rack for, anywhere from 50 to 99 cents that are getting ready to expire and not be any good, and that they wouldn't be able to sell otherwise. So I go ahead and stock up on those. I'll buy like 6 or 7 at a time, and then I bring them home and grind them in my food processor and turn them into breadcrumbs. And I store that in my freezer so that I always have breadcrumbs on hand. And then if when I'm making my meatloaf, if I notice that it's a little bit too dry, instead of adding more eggs, typically I will just do a splash of milk. And so I went ahead and added that in here because it needed it. And then I just added a little bit more breadcrumbs to compensate that extra liquid. And I'm giving this a really good mix to combine before we get it on our pan. Now, the way that I like to cook my meatloaf is a little bit untraditional. I typically don't use meatloaf pans because I like using a baking sheet. So I'll lay parchment paper down and really, really even this out. Make sure you don't have any areas where the hamburger is super thick in one spot and super thin in the next. But I lay this out flat so that all of this can brown up, and it gives it really, really good flavor. So I let the meat caramelize first in the onion and top it with extra garlic and Parmesan. And then after it's all browned, I just layer the top with ketchup. Now, I've also done this with jams, jellies. You could do half ketchup, half barbecue sauce, however you want to do it. Whatever toppings you would like to add are totally fine, but then I let the first half brown in the oven for probably 20 minutes on 375, and then I also let the ketchup on it cook in the oven for about an extra 15 minutes. So next I'm moving on to my potatoes. These are all cooked and I just drained the water off, so I added a splash of cream, some butter, a bunch of garlic, salt, and pepper. And you can go back and forth on those ratios. Like I said, I just usually go by feel, but I will try to find an exact recipe down below that is similar to the one I'm making here. I always add green onions to my potatoes because it makes it taste good. Here is the finished meatloaf, and then here is the finished mashed potatoes. All right, guys, so I finished dinner. The meatloaf and the mashed potatoes are all done, and it's done a little bit earlier than I would usually do it, but if I'm home for the day, I try to get meals finished a little bit early. My daughter's lunch hour is pretty early in the day, and usually by the time I pick her up, she's hungry. So I got everything finished so that she can have stuff to nibble on until dad gets home, and then once he's home, we will sit down and have a meal together as a family. So I just want to thank you guys so much for tagging along with me today. Thanks for being in my kitchen. Thank you guys so much for your love and support and kind words on all my videos. I really, really gratefully appreciate it. And I hope this video has taught you something. I hope it's inspired you. I hope it's brought you some joy for your day. And I hope you guys all have a fantastic rest of your week. And I will see you next time.